So now we're going to go into the altered intervals. In other words, the intervals are going to use the black notes here. And depending on the key, of course, it's going to alter that diatonic scale. And the only notes that alter the diatonic scale in the key of C are these black notes here. In other keys, it's going to be different than that. But at any rate, the first one you're going to encounter, remember we went from the major second, so you're going to have a minor second going a semitone up. That's a minor second. Next one above the major second would be the minor third. So minor is lowering. In other words, if that's a major, then lowering a half a tone, semitone, is minor. So this is a minor second. The third now, minor third. Fourth now, this is interesting. The fourth, to go to here, can now be augmented. That'd be a sharp, an F sharp. Or we can go to the fifth, and then we can diminish it. So then in that case, it'd be a G flat. You see, so this is an augmented fourth, and this is a diminished fifth. Same thing with the next one, which is, this is the perfect fifth, so this is an augmented fifth. Sometimes it's usually written as a sharp 5. Same thing with this, a sharp 4 or a flat 5. Sharp 5 or augmented fifth, or it could be a minor 6 or diminished 6. I guess I'd call it a minor 6. That'd be an A flat. And then up here we have a minor 7th. So that's interesting. So we have the minor 3rd, we have the minor 6th, and we have the minor 7th. Now, it's important to realize this is a minor 7th. This is a major 7th, this is a minor 7th. Even though when we put it into a dominant 7th chord, you don't think of it as you still think of it as a minor 7th interval, or a flatted 7th, something we call that the flat 7. Now we're going to go into the upper structure, the notes above the scale, above the octave. Above the octave, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, this is the major 9, the major 10, the 11, the 12, which is really the 5th, we call it the 5th, and then the major 13. And for terminology, for jazz and chord symbols, we don't go above 13. So I'm going to start with these now that are below the octave, and this is a semitone. So you also have this one here, and you have this one here. So I'm going to use that one, but I'm going to put it down an octave because it applies to the C chord. So now here you can take that semitone and put it into a C major chord, and you have a C major 7, but inverted. You see, there's a C major 7, 1, 3, 5, major 7 interval. Put that major 7 down an octave, and I have it there. You see, I can also go up to an inversion of that, up to here, and put it there, and it sounds pretty good too. So there's where you have it within the actual scale of C. Now you also have, so you know they have that semitone, but you also have this semitone, but it doesn't apply to a C chord. More than likely this applies to an F chord, like that, F major 7, or it can also apply, be the inner makings, inside. Okay, so this chord now can be the inside of a D minor 9 chord. So if you put a D here, 1, flat 3, 5, this would be its flat 7, this would be its 9, and there's its flat 3 again. See, so that's a little complicated, but just wanted you to know that there's another usage of that semitone. The next interval is the minor third, so it's minor being lower. That's our sad sound. Now, of course, you're going to have the minor triad. You can also have a minor 6, or also you can have a minor major 7. Now, if you want to put altered notes in there, you can have a minor 7th, or you can have a minor 7 flat 5. So you have all of those possible. But the first one you want to learn is just the minor triad and maybe the minor 6. Something in addition about the 6th chord, the minor 6, and then this augmented 5th, or minor 6, you could call it. A minor 3rd and a minor 6th. This is kind of like the James Bond theme. You can do it like this. You can do it like this. Okay, the next one, the augmented 4th, is very interesting. That's a tritone. What that means is 3 whole tones, and it's a tritone within a dominant 7th, and specifically it's the dominant 7th of an A flat, right, or its tritone, which would be a D7. Now, in the case of the D7, it wants to resolve to G, which would be 5 of the C. So that'd be a 2-5-1. You don't need to understand that yet. Okay, so this interval is an augmented 4th, sharp 4, or a diminished 5th, flat 5. It's a tritone, but it also can be used in the key of C, like that, as a C with a flat 5 in it, or a C diminished, which is like a C minor with a flat 5. That's a diminished chord. Or a half diminished, which we add that note. Full diminished would be this. The next one would be there. Now that's the augmented 5th, sharp 5, or minor 6. Now generally, put that with a major triad, it wants to take you to here. Right, so it becomes a dominant chord. Dominant 7th function on the C chord to take us to the subdominant of 4. It's used often a lot in blues. Used a lot in jazz, that augmented 5th. Okay, now the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, minor 7. This is an important one because it's used with the dominant 7th chord, with the minor 7th chord, and with the minor 7th chord flat 5, which is the half diminished. So you're going to see those chords a lot. So that's one of the chords you really want to learn right away, is the dominant 7th, the minor 7th, and the minor 7 flat 5. So, you know, starting through the cycle of an important 7th chord, you'd have C major 7, you'd have C dominant 7, you'd have C minor 7, you'd have C minor 7 flat 5, and then you'd have C diminished, full diminished 7th, in which that note is not there. So it's flatted twice. The C major, the B is flatted twice there. So now if it's C dominant 7th, it's probably wanting to move to here, to F. If it's minor 7th, it might be moving through a cycle like this. Might be the 2 chord of another scale. If it's half diminished, it's probably moving through to a minor chord like this. And if it's diminished, it's probably either resolving to another form of C, or it's resolving up a half step or down a half step, like this, or like this, or so. Diminished chords tend to move chromatically to resolve, or now this next step is for intermediate levels or advanced even, and you could just take the major scale now, go above the octave. So now we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 5, 13. So now if we have 9, we can apply that interval to a major 7 chord. We have a major 9 now. Or we can apply it to a dominant 7th chord. Right, a dominant, and we have a dominant 9 now. This is generally called just a C9. This is called C major 9. This is called C9. And then we have the minor version of it with the minor third. So now you have a C minor 9, and you can also have a C minor 7 flat 9. In other words, a C half diminished 9. It's a little hard for me because of the bent finger, but there's the chord. So that's the 9. Now I explained that this note can be the flat 9. This note can be a sharp 9, particularly if you have a major third below it. It's a sharp 9. But if you have a minor third, if it's a minor chord and you have that note, that becomes a minor 10th, like this. Major 10th, minor 10th. So that's really like a minor triad, but the third is up an octave. And it's used a lot in, in ragtime, this type of motion, or this walking tense. Like that. So it's very important to know how to play a 10th and know how to play a minor 10th. And if you have trouble playing it, just roll it like this, using the pedal to hold the notes. The 11 becomes significant if we put it into a suspended chord like this. That just means that the 11 is the same as the 4. Now, I hadn't talked about that before, but this is a good thing to learn. The 9 is the same as the 2, but an octave higher. The 10 is the same as the 3. 9 is the same as the 2. 3, 10 is the same as the 3, an octave higher. 11 is the same as the 4, an octave higher. 12 is the same as the 5, octave higher. And 13 the same as the 6. So we can look at above this, we can look at this as a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So the 11 now is most commonly used as a suspended chord like this, or as a minor 11 like this. That's quite often where you have a minor 9 chord and you're going to add and build 11, because we build, block chords build in thirds like this. Minor third, major third, minor third, major third, minor third, up to the 13, major third. Okay, so the 13 now, as we went up 11, 12, it's just the same as the 5, so we're not going to deal with that. But the 13 now will have a major 13 like this. You can have a minor 13. You can have a dominant 13, which is the most common one, I think, is probably the dominant 13. If it just says C13, it means this chord. So you're going to have, let's put it down here so it's easier to see. So you have the dominant 7th, probably put the 3rd in there, maybe here. You might add the 9 there, like this. You have that 13 in there. So that's a dominant 13 chord. It's going to be used a lot with these types of chords with a melody and whatever you're playing. At the top is the melody note where you want to add some color. You don't want just a sound like that or even like that. You want that other tonality in there that gives it, spices it up a little bit. Now I'm going to be talking about the altered intervals above the octave. So the octave, these black notes are going to be added now. Now this is the most important part for advanced or intermediate jazz if you want to get into real jazz chords, are these now. So if this is the 8 and this is the 9, then this is called the flat 9. We don't call it a sharp 8, we call it a flat 9. We don't call it a minor 9 because that could be confused with a minor chord. We call that a flat 9. And guess what? This one here we call a sharp 9. We don't want to confuse it with a minor third. So with a flat 9, most of the time it's going to be played with a dominant 7th. and it's going to resolve like that. So dominant 7th is going to resolve to its related 1. So C7 is going to resolve to F major, right? So flat 9. Now, the sharp 9, you have to make sure that it's a sharp 9 by definition, because you have to have a major 3rd below it and the minor 3rd there. If you have a minor 3rd below it, it's just a minor 7 chord. But here it's there's a dominant 7th chord now, because you have the 3rd in it, you see. So like, a good way to play it is like maybe like this, or like, let me get it down here. Now that's very bluesy sound and can actually replace a minor 7 chord in quite a few instances. Bill Evans uses it a lot to replace a minor chord instead of playing, which is a little bland. You have this touch of tension there. You have this major 7 interval inside there that gives it a real gritty sound, and it's used a lot with funk music, like. So on. So next, the 11, 8, 9, 10, 11, the sharp 11. Now this is a biggie, because this is really has a lot to do with, you have that tritone in there, but it has a lot to do with coloring upper extension chords. Just as a C9, we'll add a sharp 11 to it and we get this. That. You see, now often when we put a tritone substitute in, we have to add that in order to make it work, like maybe we're doing this. Well, sharp 9. And there's the sharp 11. See, there you have a sharp 9 chord, but with the sharp 11 on top. Now how can you find that? Well, it's a D flat chord, so you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, sharp 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, sharp 11. Resolving down to C. Same thing now with the 13. You go up here, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 becomes flatted. Now you have that note in there. So instead of having this chord, you have maybe this, resolving to F, F major 9. So in that chord, the C7 now with the flat 9 and the 10th and the flat 13 resolves nicely, all down half steps like this. See, so this is moving down a half step, this is moving down a half step, this is moving down a half step. That economy of motion is what is the beautiful sound in jazz chords. So now there you have it. The upper extensions, the altered intervals within the octave, how they're applied to chords. So one thing I want to clarify is that these are all the intervals based on the C scale. You're going to use the same principles for any scale you play. So if you play the F scale, the major 2nd is here, in other words, major 3rd. So you're counting on each scale to figure out, there's the 4th. If you're in G, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's the 4th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's the 5th. Say it's D flat. Now you have a more complicated scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, there's your 4th. So a good thing to practice is your intervals. Practice your 3rds in different keys, or your 5ths in different keys. You see, that's a good drill. Practice an interval, a particular interval, like 3rds is a really good one to practice in all keys, like this, randomly. Then you're really beginning to know your keyboard. Now, please write to me, let me know your comments. I tried to move this along quickly so it wouldn't be bogged down and boring. But you can always slow it down using that wheel below the settings wheel below the video. You can slow it down to half speed to follow along, or ask me questions. And I think it's an important thing to understand all the intervals that are possible, including the altered intervals, and then eventually learn them in other keys. Now you want to start with the easy keys, so start learning them in the key of C and applying them to songs that you're playing, and then move to maybe the key of F, and then maybe the key of G, and from there you can go to B flat or E flat, whatever the easier keys are for you, you know. And over time you'll gradually begin to learn these chords and find them automatically. You know, if I want a C7, if I want a C9 sharp 11, it's there. If I want a C9 sharp 11 and F, it's there. If it's in B flat, it's here, and so on. You'll begin to feel these chords more automatically in your hands and know what they sound like the more you practice this. So good luck with that, and we'll talk next time. People ask me about my book, and so I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into my book. Now this is the cover, and you can see it's slightly bented because it's on the music stand, so it's not perfectly straight. But anyway, you can see how it's laid out here, and it's in a 3-ring binder. Now you won't find a book like this anywhere that I've ever seen. So it's very practical. In a 3-ring binder, you can take any page out and photocopy it. So here you have the introduction about the author, and then you have the table of contents for volume 1. Then we start out with the chromatic scale. First thing you should learn, and also the major scale. Now before we do that though, I show you the chromatic scale, which shows every note and its accidentals, and then I show you application of the chromatic scale in song. So right away you're getting a practical application, not just learning theory, but you're actually delving into songs and seeing how they function melodically within the chromatic scale. And then we go to the major scale, or the diatonic scale, which we start out in C, and we show you two aspects of it, the horizontal aspect and the vertical aspect. And then we talk about the notes above the octave, and then melodic phrases. This applies the scale to actual tunes and what their formula is in terms of the intervals and the melodic intervals. Then we go right into the cycle of fifths, one of the most important things you need to learn about harmony and how chord progressions work through the cycle of fifths. And then we get into the major scales and the minor scales. You have them all laid out for you. And now chapter 2 is intervals. Major and perfect intervals, and then the altered intervals, and then intervals above the octave, which are most important for jazz piano, and all jazz players. Signing off from the Jazz Ranch. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. I hope you learned some things, and you will write to me. I love to hear from you. I always try to respond to all my comments. And until next time, I will say, in the words of my great friend Hermie Dressel up there looking down at us with pity, as always, he always said when I left his office, swing loose! And we'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.